Thank you for joining us this evening, folks. My name is Jeff Crowley. I will be your host this evening as we learn from our university and our esteemed colleagues. Just a few housekeeping rules. There will be no chat box this evening, but you can ask questions through the Q&A box. Don't worry if it's towards the end and you don't get your questions answered. The representatives will get a transcript and can answer them later. We appreciate your time and enjoy your evening. Take it away, guys.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that intro. I'm just going to pull up our slides here, so I hope everyone can see that. Thanks for attending. My name is Joe Shields. I'm an admissions counselor. I've been with Goucher for about 5 years now. And we also have Kim Donahue, an admissions counselor, who can help you with that Q&A box. And like we were saying, you know, if we'll try to address your questions in real time, but we'll have your information if not, and we can always follow up. So I'll just walk you through a bit of Goucher. I sometimes go along with this presentation, so bear with me. Trying to make sure we're on time here. Now, if you're not familiar with our location, we are just outside of Baltimore, Maryland. A lot of times people are wondering, you know, if we're downtown or if it's an urban campus, because it is actually a really great college area. We're about one of a dozen colleges in the Baltimore area. And you can see a little bit from this slide here, the Inner Harbor, the aquarium right there, and on the left, some murals of, you've got our Rowdy, our gopher right there, and next to Towson. But we're situated right outside of Baltimore. You can see a little bit of our campus. We'd love to have you on campus to see a little better, but it's very rural. We're almost 300 acres as a small liberal arts college. And if you could see further, you would actually see some hiking trails just beyond these buildings right here on our campus, which students really enjoy. We actually even have almost 30 horses on our campus, so it feels quite rural. But we're in Towson, Maryland, just a mile from Baltimore City. So our students really enjoy our location. They're able to go into the city, whether that be to other campuses. You can take classes at the neighboring colleges as well. There's a nice exchange there, or just have a fun place to be on the weekend or something like that. So that's a really great strength for a small liberal arts school. A lot of our peer institutions are pretty remote, pretty removed, but we've really benefited from our location with that as an asset. And our breakdown, if you are looking into Goucher today, I hope you're familiar with our category school being small, private liberal arts, but we're under 1,400 students at the undergraduate level, 700 graduate students. The campus is really undergraduate, though a lot of our graduate programs tend to be more online. So you'll see that translates nicely to a small class size. The average class size is about 17 students or so. I often say once you get further into your major, that's more like 10 or a dozen students in a class once you get those upper level credits you're entering. And it's 10 to 1 students to faculty. So if that wasn't already on your radar for our category of school, it's very much about the student-professor relationship. They are often giving advice for students about how to navigate the major. And we'll talk about that in a minute with additional resources that they're providing students. I would like to say Goucher is very diverse, and I can just show you the breakdown here by our statistics. We've had very strong LGBTQIA representation, especially in the last few classes. While Maryland is our most represented state, that's where we are, we do have a pretty good geographic diversity. Usually Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey are popular for us, but then actually California is one of our most represented states. It's usually 4th or 5th most represented state on campus. So we have a lot of West Coasters. It kind of makes a nice eclectic feel on campus. I'm usually running into students from very different walks of life. There's kind of a nice exchange there. And we'd love for you to get in touch with our students after today, because that culture is very easy to recognize once you have a conversation with our students. It's very celebratory of their differences. Good representation for students of color with some resources we'll go into later through these slides. Over a quarter student athletes. It's very easy to be involved as a student athlete at Goucher. Our athletes are very involved on campus. They're serious students. They still get to study abroad. They get the full experience, and the coaches are very much mentors looking after them as well. We've been recognized for great first generation success. for our first-gen students coming in also. But I do hope, I do hope diversity is a priority for you in your college search. I feel like sometimes it can be a little bit of a buzzword in higher ed, being on brochures and everything. But I do think having those conversations with our students would show you it's very inclusive as well, not just diverse, but very inclusive on our campus. And it's a lot of fun when you have that kind of atmosphere in a small seminar style class. And this is highlighting a few points I'm going to go over in the next few slides about our curriculum. Really, in a sense, we're going to talk about how we try to stay away from lectures. And, unfortunately, that's why I hate to kind of preview Goucher through this lecture style, a webinar style format where I'm talking at you guys, because at Goucher, it's really more of a constructive breakdown. But we really do try to have things be hands-on, and you can see a few points listed under there as well, followed by some specific professional and academic resources. Just to start off with really a couple examples, better to show you than tell you, about how we try to be more dynamic and engaging in our student seminars. The first year seminar, as the name implies, every student will have that their very first semester. And then complex problem exploration classes. We have a lot of long titles at Goucher, so we just use acronyms. CPEs, these are basically the classes that you're going to take outside of your major. So, if you were coming into Goucher and you were going to be in the sciences, maybe you're a bio major, your CPE would expose you to the arts, the humanities, etc. But a liberal arts institution is really going to want to give you a well-rounded and diverse basis for your education. Both of these classes they're pretty fun in the way they're constructed. They, instead of just looking at a single topic or discipline, will oftentimes take a real-world issue and examine that through a range of different disciplines, right? So a first-year seminar, an example that I often use, one of my favorites, is called Disease and Discrimination. You might think it's just a bio course because it's discussing diseases throughout history, the priority at which they've been cured, the resources going into that research, but also the social justice implications with, what part of the world that disease is affecting. Is it in developed nation, developing nations? What's the socioeconomic information for the demographics being affected? So something you might think is just biology or epidemiology actually has elements of history, sociology, our peace studies major. And this is really the way we want to train our students to start thinking. No topic you're going to study is in a vacuum. It's always going to relate to other factors. There may be biases involved. So we really like to start our students off thinking in those dynamics. The CPEs will also follow suit. Again, so if you're studying a certain major, certain topic, these CPEs will introduce you to topics outside of that major using real world issues in a range of disciplines. Our students really enjoy them because it's a lot of fun for them to kind of expand their horizons in terms of thinking outside the box for their majors. And skills building, 3 areas of proficiency. So these are classes that every student will take at Goucher regardless of their major. Really core skills building foundations that we want everyone to have an exposure to. Data analytics, I really hate to describe this as just a generic math requirement. A lot of colleges, I often say, will throw calculus or something like that at everybody, but that's not necessarily needed if you are maybe a creative writing major or something like that, right? So for us, data analytics is going to be more about handling information, big data, stats, might be a logistics course, but at least 2 classes everyone will take in data analytics so they are confident handling data and numbers. A lot of times these classes, you're able to actually handle real data. It might be sales numbers, it might be clients served from a local business or a small nonprofit, which is pretty cool. They can do an analysis through that semester and then they're actually handing back that information to the business, which makes it a lot more engaging and something you can actually speak about professional experience after that class. But 2 classes in data analytics for everyone. Foreign language and culture, pretty self-explanatory, really just having every student exposed to a foreign language reaching an intermediate level at least. And we will actually be talking about that quite a bit later on for why that's so specific to Goucher. And then finally, writing, every student at Goucher will take at least 3 writing classes, really just to make sure, again, regardless of their major, that they are a strong communicator, that they can get their points across, that they're compelling. Even if you're going for something more technical in computer science or chemistry, you're still going to have to convey your findings or your research to your peers or others So we find that as a fundamental skill at Goucher. Again, 3 areas where everyone will have exposure. Moving forward, the final kind of rounding out of all common classes that every Goucher student will take will be classes fulfilling this institutional commitment to race, power, and perspective and environmental sustainability. Again, these are just fundamental elements that we believe every student should have a grounding in. And oftentimes, a class along the way to your major will fulfill these as well. Again, it's usually ranging through a few different disciplines within your major. You're having exposure outside of that. We don't have any silos at Goucher, so that's very easy for students to complete. And getting to the majors, I usually like to start with this slide, but they're in a different order. I really do want to categorize Goucher's curriculum as being very flexible. Again, we are a liberal arts school. Just by our nature, we like to expose students to a range of disciplines. In talking with students, I often find that is just a natural progression of their academic journey, if you will. Our most popular major, I believe it was between 30 and 40% last year coming in, is undecided. So not really a major, but we joke and say that it's our most popular coming in. A lot of students reaching us are undecided. Many, may have an idea of what they want to do, a loose idea of a couple of majors. Sometimes students are extremely set on a certain path and then change their mind, drastically once they have greater exposure to other offerings at Goucher. That's something that we celebrate, we encourage. That's why it's very important for you to have this proximity to your professor and to your advisors. Many students at Goucher have a dual major. You actually have about a third of your credit time hours, about 40 out of 120, to choose however you like. So, if you are a computer science major and you want to take some dance classes because that looks like fun, absolutely, that's open to you. Again, there's no silos. But also, a lot of times students might progress through their major and find that a minor or maybe a full second major would be appropriate to help them complete their academic interests. You can actually see in the center column about halfway down the individualized interdisciplinary major, really just an academic way of saying crafting your own study. This isn't an option for students who are undecided. This is actually the opposite for students who have a very focused idea of what they want to do. But professors will help you craft your own major using 3 different disciplines. If you change your major, that's totally fine. You have until halfway through your sophomore year to declare. I was talking with a senior about a week ago. She changed her major within the last 7 months or so. So I'm not saying that you have to change it at the last minute, but again, as you have this exposure to what your peers are doing, the ongoing conversations with our staff and faculty, a lot of times students may change their progression. In minors as well. I have heard of some Goucher students doing a dual major and dual minor, which I think is very ambitious, but they could pull it off. Minors, of course, I don't want you to think of these as being secondary. It just refers to the number of official credit hours you need to fulfill that. But these are very strong. Something like our pre-med and pre-health concentration, for example, is a very competitive track towards medical school. We have a little under 80% acceptance rate to medical school, for example. So also great additions to consider. And some new majors, new or updated, I've been saying, I've been describing these as, for example, education has always been popular at Goucher. That isn't new. We just have some recent additions we've been making to that. So we have that as updated. Other things like engineering, for example, that is new to us. We've comprised this just last year using, I'll see if I can get all 4. Math, computer science, it's physics and chemistry, comprising our engineering sciences. So that's an example of a new program. Others are familiar, but just new official majors like professional and creative writing. Those focuses have always been very popular at Goucher. They used to be concentrations, now they're full majors. Other things you can see further down the list, the visual material culture, that is brand new. That's a good example of a brand new program. Just picking examples here, I don't have time to go through every single one, but that is a look at artifacts and architecture through the social and cultural lens of their development. So professors will actually take you off campus. You'll go into Baltimore, DC, look at buildings there. You might use our special collections department, which is very in-depth for a small school, just as a couple examples. And then actually a very new announcement, we have a new partnership with Johns Hopkins, their Carey Business School for a 4+1, so you can come to Goucher in any major, complete your undergraduate degree, then go off to Johns Hopkins for just 1 year for an accelerated master's. And that business school offers a range from business, finance, marketing, statistics, and risk assessment, as well as healthcare management. So that's a really exciting and attractive offer that you might not have heard of. That is very new for us. And then minors, music. We formerly had this as individual instruction, but now we have it as a full minor, as well as our new religion and justice minor also. And going further more into how things are hands-on, internships are an obvious one for college. Regardless of whether or not your major is going to require an internship, some do, some do not. It is going to be pushed to every student. That's something we want you to have before leaving us. This is a place where, you know, our location comes in very handy. It's about 3/4 of Goucher students will do an internship in Baltimore or Washington, D.C. You know, a lot of times juniors or seniors might have Fridays off, for example, once you have more command of your schedule. So that could be your internship day for that week. We actually have an office to help you with all of this that I'll mention in a little bit as well. And then research as well. There's a lot of flexibility for how this can be applied. We have a summer science research program, and you can kind of see Professor Mark Hiller here giving an example of that in a lab. This can really range. You know, you might think of this just for the conventional, the natural sciences, but it could be qualitative research in the social sciences. It could be an application that you might not expect. One example that I often like to use, our psychology program is our most popular major at Goucher. We have one professor who does a lot of neuropsychology research, and she invites students to be a part of that, where she is researching, well, what is it? It's detecting the electrical activity within your brain, and she's trying to develop more engaging, it's math education for elementary, you know, K through 4 younger learners as well. So that's an example of where a professor has ongoing research that she'll often include students into to assist with that, and your name will be on the publication there as well. But there's a lot of autonomy within these programs. So if you have something you're really interested in, you can reach out to a professor. They can either, you know, have that as part of the class dynamic for you doing research. They might write an independent study or make new credits for you. But that is another example where I would say the proximity to professors is really a benefit that you have, but also it can take a lot of different forms that you might not expect. Right along with that, you know, our Kratz Center for Creative Writing, you might not compare that to research, but we have good funding there, a summer fellowship, really just to support, you know, writing students, all of their endeavors. It might be sometimes, I've heard of a couple great examples recently. A student went on kind of this wilderness journey to write about some of her own works, where she had part of a book that took place in the woods. It might be for travel. We send students abroad to do conferences or international workshops, but a lot of funding just to support students' own work within the Kratz Writing Center. So very collaborative with the professors, and research that you might not have thought of. It's not always just in a lab with a microscope, even though that's the picture we have here. It can take a lot of different forms. But I would say the greatest hands-on experience for us, and I would probably argue for any college at all, would be study abroad. I can't see folks tonight, but this is usually when I'm asking the audience, you know, who here is considering study abroad for college? And I usually get a couple confident answers, and sometimes I get kind of a half hand raise for students who are thinking if they want to study abroad. But then I follow up with the fact that Goucher is a little unique here. We actually require all of our students to study abroad. So it's not only an offering at Goucher, but it is a requirement. I was mentioning those 3 areas of proficiency. This is right on paper alongside that with official graduation requirements. And I would argue, you know, for those listening tonight, if study abroad isn't number 1 on your list, if you aren't sure that you would do that, firstly, I would argue that you should definitely consider that for any college you're inquiring about. But being that we require this, we do make it a lot easier. It's rare that a college will have students study abroad. That's not common, but because we require it, I would say we make it a bit easier. So I'll jump back and forth here a little bit, but you can see our map. Basically 2 options to go. You can either go for a full semester, and that'll be with a normal lineup of multiple courses that you would be taking anyway, really wherever you want to go. So it might be for your major, it doesn't have to be for your major. A lot of students just want to go to New Zealand for the natural beauty. They're able to do that whether or not classes of their major are being offered that semester. They still get to go scuba diving, go hiking, have all that adventurous time, but they're not limited by their major. Now, if you're doing something like a dual major, something a little more rigorous, like a pre-med concentration on top of your major, maybe you don't have time to take a full semester off from your major study. Maybe you at least need a couple classes of that subject in there. But for the most part, really, we want to make sure that you're comfortable with where you've chosen, and it is your choice where to go. Backing up here to the other option, the intensive courses abroad, ICAs. The intensive really just refers to your schedule. I don't want that to sound intimidating because it's one class that's been condensed into a 3-week program. And this is a really cool Goucher-specific option because professors will actually fly with you. It's usually a smaller class of 10 or 12 Goucher students or so, but they will fly with you to different points within a country, within a city, to lead you around through a very intensive search of a certain topic. And you might see lists on here, you might not, but for example, in the past, we've sent students to Cuba. I believe that still is a rotating ICA option. That is through our business program and our Latin American studies program. And professors will lead you around. You're working with small business owners, restaurant owners. You'll talk to state representatives, but you're looking at the evolution of the Cuban economy throughout history when it's had more or less access to global trade. Our environmental studies program will take students to Costa Rica and the Galapagos, and you're looking at more sensitive ecologies and how agritourism has affected that. I know we have a theater concentration that'll take you to Paris, and I was talking to a student who did this a couple of years back, and there's some excursion. You go through the south of France. I think there might be even some cooking classes worked in there as well, but you're really looking at putting together a production, because this is for theater, in French, recruiting in French, and putting on a performance in French as well. So you really could leverage the location with where you are to what you're studying, or it could just be, that you want to be in that part of the world to do your own travel. It doesn't necessarily have to be for your studies. If you have no idea where you want to study abroad while you're still in high school, that's completely understandable. We actually have an entire office to help you figure out really everything from start to finish. We have a lot of information sessions to show you your options through a whole continent. They'll narrow it down to a region and then some cities. They'll help you figure out what classes you need to take, help you with the paperwork. So if you are uncertain about study abroad, I would totally expect you to not know where to go, but just know that it is a requirement of Goucher, so you'll have to go at some point. Most students will go their junior year. That's generally when it's advised. And the easiest point I would say to all of this is that if you go for a regular semester, your tuition and financial aid, they just carry over and they cover the cost of attendance. So that's kind of a nice benefit about this requirement, is that we could never force families to just, surprise junior year, have a higher cost of attendance for this excursion. That is built into the normal 4-year graduation for our students. I will say that there is an additional cost for the 3-week program. It's usually kind of counterintuitive, just because it would be as if you're taking summer classes. Those are generally offered over the January term, during the break, or in summer. But we even have some scholarships to go after just for that reason, for ICAs. So this is a very big point for us. Again, I would encourage you to ask of the study abroad options for all of your colleges you're looking into, not just Goucher. But it is a lot of fun, believe me. So talk to our students, ask where they've gone. You can talk to any student at Goucher and just take for granted that they have been abroad or they're going abroad, which is kind of a cool aspect. Getting back to more of our location in our campus, I will say that a really popular starting point, not every single student, but a popular starting point for Goucher is volunteer work or community outreach. A lot of students at Goucher really want to know how they can give back. That's an underlying tone, I'll say, of our education. And one great option, again, it's not required, but an option, is our community-based learning program. This is describing a little about what you'll do, but in a sense, it is community outreach. So you might be working with a nonprofit nearby, or it might just be more conventional volunteer work. It can range from, there's an ASPCA down the road from us. You might work with being in a retirement community and have conversations with residents there. There are a lot of organizations in Baltimore that do community building, because there's a lot of residential work to be done and equity to be given in Baltimore, as well as small agriculture. There's a lot of ways you could apply that volunteer work, but then you bring it back to the classroom. And that's actually part of the formal discussion in class. So the other students in the class are doing the same work. Your professor is coordinating with you. So you're not just reading about things in the textbook, but you're actually going to work with professionals who are in that line of work. It's something, if you want to be more business about it, you could put it on your resume, but it's just a nice way to actually get your hands on a certain experience, see if that's the right fit, because what you might be doing in the classroom, the actual work environment of that could look quite different from what you're just studying in the classroom. But generally, this is very popular with our students. Options will change throughout semester to semester. So if you don't see something you like at first, chances are something in your interest will pop up. But our students really enjoy this, and I would say it's great as a lot of students get more comfortable with the outside community. And we see a lot of recent graduates put down roots in Baltimore as well. So it's a very nice introduction to the greater community. Going further now towards resources we have on campus, I was kind of hinting about this when we were back with the internship slides. But we have a career education office. If you're paying attention to the acronyms, that spells out CEO. We have a lot of clever abbreviations. But our CEO office is kind of the one-stop shop for everything professional. So this is where you can go for a first point. Every student by the end of their first year will have completed a resume and a personal branding strategy. We used to have this as a more voluntary basis. We found students would wait till the very end of their senior year to work with our career resources. So now we've woven it in starting their first year. They might utilize career communities. We have students organized by different interests so they can pool their resources and experience, but really just making sure they find that professional experience, that you're not trying to get the ball rolling as you're leaving, as you're graduating out the door, putting in those stepping stones for career management. A lot of the small things that you might not think about, such as we were doing this before 2020, but Skype interviews or Zoom interviews or even just phone interviews, something that is a little daunting if you haven't done that before. You don't want to try that when you're actually out trying to get an internship or get a job. Those are the kind of things they'll practice with you. It might be as general as just starting with an assessment about what kind of workplace you would enjoy, what kind of work you would like to do, all the way down to as specific details as they actually have a closet giveaway. I didn't know about this until last year. It's a closet giveaway where if you have an important interview or internship coming up, but you don't have a professional attire, you don't have the nice, shirt and tie and everything, we can actually provide that to students in many instances as well. So really, the large and small scale elements, as well as connecting to our alums. Again, I said a lot of, especially younger alums, but a lot of grads will stick around the Baltimore, DC area. So we do have a very strong alum network for them to come to campus, or for you to kind of get your foot in the door for some professional experience. Either way, that's something these staff members organize. That was one major resource. I have kind of a rapid fire of resources on this slide. There's a lot on this slide that I don't have time to say, and there's a lot of things that aren't on this slide that deserve to be said. But I would say, I would categorize Goucher as a very supportive environment. That's another point that naturally comes with a small class size, but it's also something you really see as the commitment from leadership and our staff. So I'll try to run through these a little briefly. I want to be good on time. Sometimes I go a little late, but this would be a good question for you to follow up with afterwards. One starting example, Navigate, primarily just an online resource, online platform for our students to connect with faculty. If you were taking a lecture or a seminar that day, it's usually a seminar more than a lecture, and you really just didn't understand that conversation, you can log on to Navigate, schedule some office hours with your professors, or through there electronically reach different offices on campus. This is something we've been doing for a little while, but again, just as it happens in 2020, It's been very useful for our students going remote. I didn't mention that for this year, we are remote, we are learning virtually, so some online academic supports happen to be very, very helpful for this semester. Academic advising, so again, I was saying a lot of students might change their mind or they don't have a very grounded, solidified trajectory when they reach us for liberal arts school. Every student coming in will have a pre-major academic advisor. And then once you declare your major, again, you don't have to for a year and a half, you'll be given an advisor of that specific major as well. Changing your major is quite easy to do. Adding a secondary major is very common, but that is a very hands-on experience. And we really start those conversations even the summer before you're on campus. So this is something you'll have access to quite consistently. ACE, this next line, that's a big one. Again, always with the acronyms at Goucher, the Academic Center for Excellence. I'll just call it ACE. This kind of, again, a one-stop shop for everything academic this time. So they can help with, for example, tutoring, specific material, content-specific material, all the way to, again, kind of a larger viewpoint of just handling college as a whole. So they'll help students with things like, time management is a big one. That is a huge adjustment coming from high school to college. Learning skills, oftentimes, stress management. We find that if a student's doing well in a class, but they have outside anxiety, maybe it's an issue in your dorms or something going on back home. If you're stressed and you're not able to fully focus on what's going on in the classroom, it's still going to affect your grades and your academic success over 4 years. So ACE is very holistic in terms of making sure you're learning as a student, but you're also being able to handle college as a whole, to really teaching to the individual. Pre-med and pre-health advising, we have specific advising for pre-med, pre-health concentration. There's actually a lot to go over there with the approach to medical school, for example. They do a lot of coaching with things like that, but we have concentration-specific advising. And then finally, the Quantitative Reasoning Center and the Writing Center operates similarly. The Quantitative Reasoning Center, for lack of time, I could describe as mostly being math support. Anything from Algebra 1 to post-baccalaureate math. You can come in with a Q tutor. Again, it's a peer tutor to help with specific material. And then the Writing Center, again, everything from a very rough draft all the way to the final submission of your senior capstone, if you will. So a lot of supports to be given. There's many offices that aren't on this list. We have counseling services. We have a health center. I think a couple others might come up in the slide later on. But it's an extremely supportive environment for students with documented learning differences or otherwise. Every student has access to these supports. There's no stigma, there's no fees or anything like that. It's very supported on campus. We do have additional supports if a student does have documented learning difference. And kind of the other side to that coin, student life, the social element, I really would depict, and I'm using other slides, but this is a shorter one tonight with a lot of pictures of students going around campus. I would depict Goucher as being very tight-knit, not my words, the actual students' words, being family-oriented. I've been talking to students who are, at home right now, but they ironically say they feel like they're not at home because they feel like that's Goucher's campus. That's what they've been telling me, because it is very residential. It's about 90% of students will live on campus on average. We actually require that students are on campus through junior year, and they can live off of campus as seniors. So this is a picture within our first year village. This is a game night going on. But we do have, as you can see, a lot of community-focused events. We actually do have some faculty residents on campus, again, to really make it feel more of like an inclusive community. The first year village, if you can take our virtual tour, that's a much better look at campus. Very new buildings. That was in the very first slide, if you can remember that. We've tried to make the campus more open, dynamic, so kind of pushing students out of their rooms. There's a demonstration kitchen, which is probably my favorite part of the first year village. It has a camera in the ceiling, if you can believe it, and it's projecting behind you what you're doing on the cooktop or the cutting board. So kind of like Food Network. I don't know if we have any food fans out there, but if you can get a professor in a language department to host a cooking night, you are in luck because they are very good cooks, and RIs will put that on too. There's a game center in there. There's the wellness center right in the first year village. So it's very open. and that is immediately next to the central, the dining center on campus. I suppose every college rep says their food on their campus is very good. So I have to be a hypocrite there and say ours is good. But last I looked, the last numbers I had, we were 23rd in the country out of 4,000 plus colleges for ranking of campus food. So I kind of let that stat just do its own work. Anything from vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, there's a kosher station. I don't really pay attention to the healthy stuff. I just go right for the pizza and the burgers, but that's just me. If they're doing noodle bowls that day, you were in a lot of luck as well. So hopefully we can have you on campus in the future. And again, going further into student life, I was kind of hinting at this a few slides ago. One great central resource is our Center for Race, Equity, and Identity. Again, always with the abbreviations, CRE. This is a really great resource for LGBTQIA students, international students, students of color, but it's a place for them to go to have important conversations, affinity spaces, to make sure their voice is being central to campus. What I like about this, it's not only a resource from the staff side. I see a lot of great student leadership and student initiatives come out of this. Because I would say this is, whether a student is seeking resources through this office for themselves or not, really celebrated and viewed by the entire campus. So I see a lot of great student initiative come out of here. That is something we really love to hand over to students and let them run with the ball on that. More in terms of the social dynamic, it's a very active campus. I will say we don't have any Greek life. That tends to be pretty much at contrast with the Goucher College culture, but it's very active. It's, again, using our own students' words, not my own. They have often said they're kind of forced to make friends, if you will, because people are very outgoing coming in as a first year. The current students really want to include you in their clubs. They really want to get to know you. I think that kind of sounds overwhelming as an introvert, but they're really just trying to get across how friendly they are. A range of clubs, things on one end of the scale might be more serious or academic. There's a biology club, there's a psych club. It might be meaningful conversations being had, like the Women's of Color Circle or some volunteer groups, all the way to the other end of the scale where it's just, as I like to describe, just kind of like fun, maybe even goofy things. I always plug, there's a bad movies club. They just watch bad movies and have a good time. It's exactly what it sounds like. The beekeeping club, which I think is really cool. They keep bees. They sell honey at a few points through the semester, which is pretty great. Probably our best component, I would have to say, is the Humans vs. Zombies group. It's basically a 3-day survival mode Nerf gun fight. Students take it very seriously. You have to run and tag your friends and they're a zombie, or you have to fend them off with Nerf guns. And it's very hard to explain to families visiting that day what's going on because they just see Nerf guns and students running around, but it's a blast. The student engagement team are the ones who oversee that and sponsor student-led events. And we have the Gopher Hole, a really great lounge. It's actually kind of underneath, believe it or not, it's an underground lounge underneath our dining center, but it's kind of like a cafe down there. They have a bar to serve coffee or grilled cheeses, stuff like that, a couple pool tables. That's been closed for a while because the central dining hall and the first year village are kind of on top of it and they're so new from this construction. But that's a good hang as well. For any athletes watching tonight, we're D3. So we've got the list of men's sports, and I'll show women's sports right here as well. I would say, being D3, we don't have athletic scholarship for you coming into the college, but you also have a lot more freedom to be a very serious student, to be involved on campus, to study abroad. Again, that is a requirement for every student. Not every coach at every school is so willing to send their athletes abroad for a semester or so, but that's just something you can take for granted for us. I work with a lot of the coaches as well for recruitment, and they really look after their students in terms of making sure their commitment to their sport is not overburdening them for being involved on the rest of campus as well. So we're D3, we're part of the Landmark Conference, which is a small conference of similarly sized schools. We also have, a lot of intramural. There's volleyball near the dorms. There's a lot of tennis courts, a basketball court, golf, frisbee, or frisbee golf. I don't know which one it is. I've lost a few frisbees in the woods at Goucher. They put it right next to the woods. But if you're not playing at the varsity level, you can still do a lot of pickup games. Our equestrian program kind of stands outside of that, actually. We have a very serious equestrian program. One of the top in the nation. Again, we have a little fewer than 30 horses on campus. So if you're a serious rider, this would be something to look into. And actually, if you aren't, you can just take some riding classes. I believe it's a PE class is what it's categorized as, just for fun. But you can walk down to the stables anytime. There's no gate or anything like that. So that's kind of a cool element. When the equestrian program likes to show off or does recruiting, they'll bring horses through campus, and it's pretty neat. And then the last segment, going towards here and applying, for a lot of the reason I was discussing, and I'm trying to hurry up for time here, through the contact that you have with your professors, through the skills-based education, and really giving those critical thinking skills to think outside of the box, outside of the narrow view of a specific major, as well as with the professional resources. Again, I was kind of giving an anecdotal approach to that, but we found that that translates really nicely to the conventional success metrics that a lot of colleges use. How many grads are employed or within a year in a graduate program. We found our average is 96% either employed or in a grad program. The survey actually found about a third were doing both, which I think is great. Again, I don't know too many Goucher students who are only looking at one thing at a time. They really like to get their hands on a range of things. But we found those, again, piece by piece, those specific supports really translate well to the conventional stats. Some places we've sent students to graduate school because, again, your professors, you've talked with them, you're making sure you have a very competitive profile as an applicant. They're coaching you towards that because they'll know your plans. After graduating, they'll have given you a very specific, a very strong letter of recommendation because they know your strengths as a learner and they know how to emphasize that. Some places we've sent students to work. Again, you'll have a competitive profile. Having worked with your professors, a lot of times, maybe there's a contact in your professor's network where you can get an internship, get your foot in the door, or if you don't have contacts there that we can help you with, we've made sure your professional support is really bolstered through our career education office. A range of places students have gone for us. In terms of the numbers, this is a very data heavy slide, and I'm trying to make sure we're on time. But basically this horizontal bluish green bar at the bottom, that is the net present value added to a Goucher specific degree. You can see 20, 30, 40 years out. So again, I was describing a lot of Goucher students as wanting to give back, see how they can support, work for nonprofits or educators, but that's not meaning that it's coming at sacrifice of their financial earnings. This study was also showing that a small private and liberal arts graduate on average has very competitive earnings for even graduates of STEM school, for example. So again, these critical skills, we've given you critical thinking skills, this well-rounded skills-based foundation translates very nicely for actual skills that our employers are looking for, and that's reflected in their earnings. And again, I've used different presentations, so I didn't know if there was another slide coming up, but this is the final point for some accolades for which we're known. Love to see CTCL right there. You guys know about that. But we are often recognized as being most innovative, for example, and one of the best liberal arts colleges. We do all with U.S. News. Great campus pride, and I would love to connect you with more Goucher students because don't just take my word for it. Our students are very eclectic and they can really give you a sense of that, of that belonging, I would say, as part of the community. We're talking a little bit about social mobility going forward from Goucher. And we've been recognized. I think a lot of students even find us on their list because they've heard about our study abroad program, but that's very heavily emphasized, within higher ed Goucher study abroad program as well. Great, so I suppose, take off sharing my screen. I don't know if we've had any questions come through. But like I said, the next steps are oftentimes, I would really love for you all to talk to our students. I'm really impressed by our students, especially our ambassadors. They come through the office. They teach me about a lot of things in terms of what they're learning or a lot of crosses between a couple different disciplines they might do. Talk to our professors. I think, especially if you aren't sure if the fit is right for a major you're looking for, if you have a couple different ideas of multiple majors, 2, 3, maybe even 4, having those conversations with our professors, they're really great about, sometimes students might have an unconventional combination of interests and professors can say, oh no, that's actually a great skill set that, this industry would find important or something like that. So it's very easy to be in touch with our faculty. I think that's a nice test of seeing how accessible a college's faculty can be before you're actually even an enrolled student. So please test us, please reach out to our professors. There's some really great conversations to be had there as well. Wonderful. So yeah, okay. I'm not sure if it doesn't look like we've had any questions.
I don't think so, Joe, but obviously those students in attendance can certainly email those to the university afterwards. Joe, anything else you want to say as we wrap up here?
No, really just that, we're an open book. This was a great breakdown about general points of the college, but for your specific interests, I would love for you to continue that conversation. We can refer you to professors and students, and that's really where it takes off for your college search.
Very good. Well, Joe, thank you very much. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. As you wrap up and you close your browser window, there will be a quick survey. Would appreciate you taking that. Certainly sign up for other sessions to learn about other universities and colleges. And if you want to rewatch this or remember something from it, it will be available and has been recorded. Thank you all for your attendance. Have a great evening.
Thanks for hosting.
Bye-bye.